Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of Bridging Leadership Gaps. My name is Florian Lung, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. And today I'm joined by my teaching partner, Alena Ipanova. Welcome, Alena.
Thank you so much, Florian. Good to see you again and happy to discuss this topic today. Very important one.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And you're right. Authority, it's not enough. So in today's world, as leaders and sometimes leaders in cross-functional organizations like project managers and change makers, we don't really have always the formal authority to influence our people. And so we found that it's an influence gap that we find in organizations. So today we try to give our viewers some practical things that they can apply in their leadership that will help them increase their influence. So I'm excited about the topic.
Yeah, and I think, Florian, that it's also important to specify why it is important to increase your influence. Is here we also talk about multiple effects of your influence in terms of your personal growth and professional growth, in terms of the results that you create for your team, and the overall results that you create for your department or your organization, the impact that you do on a bigger scale. So basically, it all starts with influence. That's why this topic is worth talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. And this actually reminds me of I think John Maxwell. I'm certified with his materials, and we use his principle a lot in leadership development. But I think he's probably most famous for one quote where he says, "Leadership is influence, nothing more,
Mm.
nothing less." And I kind of started to believe that because in my early career, I didn't really know what leadership was. I didn't know what influence was. But what I learned was that I didn't have a lot of influence with my people. So this was kind of my first experience in being a team leader. I got promoted to be the team leader of a team of engineer I was part of. And all of a sudden, I was the manager of these people that were my buddies, my colleagues, and we needed to deliver on some projects, and I needed them to kind of accelerate the deliveries. And what I got back from them when I asked was, Florian, now you're on the other side. I mean, don't play the boss with us. You know how things work around here. And they wouldn't follow me. So I had the title, I was the manager. My boss gave me the permission to be the manager. They promoted me, but I didn't have their permission. They didn't follow me. So that's how influence actually operates. And that's it was my kind of wake up call that probably I'm not doing something right, and I was suffering from this influence gap. So that was kind of my first experience with understanding how this influence works.
I like this example. And it also shows us that if we come to the definition of what is the influence gap actually that we are talking about, and it is about our intention, what we want to achieve or communicate as leaders, what we want to create as leaders, and then the outcome. And when the outcome or how people experience our leadership is not aligned with our intention, then there is this gap. So the alignment is needed so that the influence creates something which is worth it, right? Something, the outcome that we intend to create. And if there is a gap and misalignment, then yeah, we might end up in such situation as you just described. So what was your remedy? So what did you do to change the situation? I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah. So what happened was that I mean, everything we shared today, I didn't know about. I didn't even know about John Maxwell at the time. So what I naturally was inclined to do was to solve some problems because I knew what the problems were and the challenges were. Being an engineer myself, I kind of knew what they were complaining about. So I started to take ownership of some topics that they wanted, for example, to have more test equipment, to have better work conditions. So I drove those topics and initiatives, towards the management. And, through the period of time, we started to get some results. So I started to get some wins for the team, and that increased my influence. John Maxwell talks about 5 levels of influence, He calls him the 5 levels of leadership, and it starts with the position. That's where I started. But he says position is a really good place to start, but a really bad place to stay. And the way we can actually gain influence with people is it's through 3 main things. Number one is to build relationship with people. People have to kind of know who's flooring, like who's the person behind this title, behind this position, for them to kind of want to follow us and for us to have more influence with them. The second one, it was what came natural for me, was to bring results. So either you have a good relationship with people or you bring results for the team, then people will want to follow you because of the results you brought for the team. And then when you have both relationship and results, then if you develop people and people feel that they're valued and developed, then brings more influence for you. So for me, it was natural to go towards the results. I was not a very relationship-oriented person. But all kind of 3 aspects or 3 strategies help us build more influence with our team. So that got me kind of started. People say, oh, Florian can do some things for us. Okay, so maybe it's not a really bad leader. But that was things that I've done unconsciously. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just that it felt natural for me to go more on the results side, in building, not in building relationship, but in solving problems, because I was more task oriented at the time. I was more solution oriented. So depending on if you are more relationship oriented, you would go with building relationships with people, which gives you more influence. If you are more task oriented, as I was, then you would go into solving problems, bringing results. And most people want to be on a winning team. So if you're winning, then you get more influence. Does this make sense?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that even though I work a lot with these dimensions, and this is also something cultural, whether we are task-oriented or relationships-oriented. And of course, it also pairs up with our experience, in which environment we worked or grew up. Very often people are unaware about their own preferences. And also very often we mix different things. Again, it depends on the context, it depends on what's at stake, if it's an urgent matter. And then if we add stress factor to that, our behavior and priorities might drastically change. So I would say that this is a brilliant example with being more task-oriented or relationship-oriented. I would add to that it's good to reflect on what's your autopilot? Where do you go when you're unaware, and does it serve you well or not? And then just start reflecting on that and seeing, maybe I need to shift something in my behavior so that people's experience with me, like we get to the same page, it's in alignment with my intention. And I really like these 2 dimensions that you brought in.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. I mean, how can we even increase our influence with other people without really being aware of how do we show up? How do we, influence? How are we perceived? And I like the way we position this gap, between your intentions or what you would like the people to do or the team to do or the results to be or the outcome to be and what it is. And that's actually, if you're not getting what you want from your team, if people are not doing the things that you know are good for them and the team, you probably don't have enough influence with them. And this is sometimes it shows like the difference between when people are engaged and motivated. We say that there is a difference between your contractual obligation. So let's say we all have a job description, okay? So if you meet your job description, you meet your contractual obligation, which is kind of the floor, right? But then if you are motivated and engaged and you feel that the organization, the leader, are actually really caring about you, then you're motivated. So you tap into what is called to be discretionary goodwill. So this is not something you ask me to do, but I do it just because I want to do it. So the more influence you have, the more you can tap into the discretionary goodwill of your people. And that's where, the difference starts to be made between, okay, if you are an authoritarian leader, then you kind of based your leadership on the contract or the, this is your role description, you have to do what's in the role description. But then there's always something that is not in the role description, and that's where, if you don't have influence, people might not do it. So I like to hear your thoughts on how do you see the idea and the using of authority in different cultures. I have found that in the Nordic cultures, you cannot really use that position level. Even I'm the boss, I cannot really tell people that. That's something that
You
you
felt
cannot use
that
at
in your
all.
own, you felt that in your own experience, right?
And that was exactly, and that was Romania, and they were still kind of following to some extent because it was Romania. But in Sweden, I mean, and I've done this with so many leaders, and I ask them, and they say, no, no. Has it ever happened to you for someone to come to you and say, you have to do it because I'm the boss? If you do that, the next day people will call in sick. So you can't really add that kind of pressure, and you cannot use your authority. So the only kind of remaining tools you have is building relationships, building results for people, developing them. But I'm curious to get your take on how these different relationships, results, authority, these principles vary across cultures.
Thank you. This is a very good question, Florin. And I think I have so many examples. And again, I would specify that all the examples that I share here, they might be very general, which means that they shouldn't be applicable. Like if I speak about specific culture of my clients, for example, it doesn't mean that every representative of this culture will behave the same way, right? Because we are composed of so many different things, and we have this multifaceted identity. Culture is definitely something that influences us. And then I would say it's important to understand, first of all, culture as a system, as you described, how things work here. You try to apply the same model from Romania. It worked perfectly in Romania. You apply it in Sweden, and in Sweden, suddenly it doesn't work. It produces a totally opposite result. So here we need to understand what is culture as a system, and what is the gap between how we used to do things and how things are done here, which parts in our behavior we need to flex in order to create better outcome. And I will give an example of one of my clients, a Swedish manager I've been working with, who's been promoted to manage the department in India. So that was a relocation. And he was a very successful manager in terms of engaging team, motivating, being very inclusive. And we know that Sweden is egalitarian in terms of the leadership, and just by the examples that you shared. So he tried to apply the same methods in India, trying to involve all the team members into discussion, shaping the meeting agenda, taking decisions, and he didn't get response in the same way as he used to get in Sweden. So he started just wondering about this. What is it that I'm doing wrong? And then he found out that he was taken as a poor leader by his Indian team, because they got used to more like you are on a management position, leadership role, you have an authority, you should take decisions. We follow your directions. So that was how they used to do things there. So here I would say it's power dynamics can play a role, also how we communicate directly, indirectly. So there are so many dimensions, but generally the takeaway here is that you have to be flexible. Do not assume that what works in this context and in this environment will work equally successful in another environment. So you have to observe first and question your own assumptions or thoughts. Talk to people in order to understand how to influence across context. So that would be my take on that.
Absolutely, that's very valuable. And it seems like in your example, authority or position would have more leverage in the Indian culture than in the Swedish, right? That's kind of a takeaway. So and I also saw the reverse of that, where you would have Indian, experts, Indian, engineers relocating to Sweden, and you would have a mixed team, and the leader would apply the same leadership style like in the other team members to an Indian colleague, and the Indian colleague would expect more hands-on, top-down more or less leadership style, while the leader would apply more hands-off, and give freedom to the employee. And again, this is where, as leaders now, we work in so diverse and multicultural global teams that we almost have to apply a different leadership strategy with each individual, like even inside a culture. And then if you add multiple cultures, then you have even more elements that are moving parts. So if we try to, let's say, give our listeners something that is, let's say, universal, applicable, that doesn't have to do with position or culture, is there a way that they could communicate, without authority? Is there a framework that we share with them, something that is useful?
Yeah, this is a brilliant question here. Actually, when you were talking about the global teams, and now we have like lots of people working hybrid and remotely as well, I was thinking about that. It's not even about, definitely it is about flexibility, that as leaders, we need to be flexible. And sometimes when I work with executive coaching, for example, and I get these questions like, Aliana, it's so energy consuming. How can I adjust my communication style to every individual? And my answer here or recommendation would be that it's not about you adjusting your style, but it's also about creating your team culture. The team can be composed of individuals like with various backgrounds, but we are here, we are working together, we have a clear goal. So how can we make things work? What should we do? And the biggest challenge that I see that people never talk about that. So they assume that, okay, people, like we are all adults, we all have experience. So we just, okay, let's have a conversation. They have team building activity and we bring all people to the same page, but it doesn't happen. And because we all still drive on our own assumptions and judgments. So I would say the first practical step is to actually talk about each other's preferences when it comes to, for example, in leadership and influence. If I'm receiving the feedback, in which form do I want to receive the feedback so it's actionable, so that actually it motivates me to go and do things? So how do I share it with my leader? Or if I'm in a leadership role and I want to motivate and encourage my team, how do I know exactly what motivates them? How to build the conversation? And it brings me to one tool that I'm using and many of my clients are using. It's mentioned in the book by Adam Grant, and it's called powerless communication. And I would say my clients from highly hierarchical cultures always question that, like, does it really work? And what is this powerless communication? But this is how you communicate without authority. And exactly like the points that you mentioned, Florin, about building relationships and empathy, understanding people, and also moving them forward. This is something that is like, it's not about giving directives, but it's more about asking questions and checking in. And if there is an uncertainty, addressing that uncertainty directly instead of just kind of jumping through it and hoping that, okay, it will resolve in a conversation. So look into this model or like framework, powerless communication, because there are different structures there as well, how you can ask questions, how you can ask for feedback, so that you come across as someone who cares, who wants to understand the situation, and you will not run on assumptions, because you will have conversations about different challenges or the situation, the support that your team or your people need. So that would be one of the recommendations from my side. And I would like to hear from you as well. What's your take on that? What you see works well for your clients? And maybe we can think about what would be the formula of influence if I'm a leader, for example, and I haven't reflected much on that. Like if we imagine that, and I really want to start from somewhere to elevate my influence. What should I do? What could be the steps?
Yeah. So I just want to circle back on what you just shared. So it seems like this powerless communication, it has us communicate from a position where, as if we were not be in power. Is that what it is?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's more or less.
It's not defined by the status. It's not defined by the role that I have. So basically, we also need to redefine what leadership is. Basically, it's not something that the title gives you. It's something that is earned by your reputation, consistency in how you show up for yourself and for others, how people experience you, and what's the alignment between your intention and the impact you create. So these type of things. So yes,
Yeah,
it's not about leadership role per se.
absolutely. Yeah. So influence has little to do with your position, and the way you can actually have even more influence with people in your communication is not to use your position in your communication.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and that's your powerless communication, which is, I think it's a great tool. So I'm definitely going to look into that. So let's try to so if we think about how can we, increase our influence, one author that I'm working with a lot is Dr. Robert Cialdini. And he wrote two books on influence. Like if John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, then if you want to get more influential, then where do you go? Then now you go and study Dr. Robert Cialdini's work on influence. So that's one of his most sold book. It is exactly called that way, influence. And he talks about 7 different principles on how we can influence other people and gain influence. I'm not going to go through all of them right now, but some that help us. For example, and this is probably say, oh, Florian, this is basic, but part of the influence formula, he talks about the principle of reciprocity. Reciprocity has to do, and this is research based. So they have found out that we're more likely to pay back, a gift or something that someone offered to us. There is kind of a social pressure on us to not have debt, right? So if I give you a favor, if I give you a gift, if I give you something of value, if I add value to you, and this could look like, I was discussing this with an audio life audience a week ago. These people were more project professionals, project leaders, and they were someone asking, but I'm not the manager. Like, how can I add value to someone? How can I give value first? And someone said, well, you know what? If they need in your project, if they need structure, if you are the structured project leader, that's valuable to them. So you already add value by offering them or leading the project in the way that your people expect them, expect you to lead. But the whole idea is how I use this in practice is that I'm always thinking about what is something that you value. So if we meet for coffee, if we meet for, if you would be on my team, I would always think about things that you value, and sometimes with a good reason, but other times without reason. I would add value to you. I would say, hey, this is a book I found. I think will be interesting. Maybe something that you could read maybe on your commute time. And I would just offer that to you with no expectation whatsoever. And if we add value first to our people, if people feel that we're adding more than we're taking from them, naturally, when we're going to ask them to do something, when we ask them to follow us, to contribute to the project, they will be more likely to pay back that favor if we were the first one to give. So this has nothing to do with position, has nothing to do with leadership, but it's a principle that he have found through research that can help us, gain more influence with people.
Yeah, it makes me think like two ways, like how you can manipulate by doing that, and the necessity of making it natural. So I think that and people have a feeling when you are being authentic, when you care. And I love this example, like when you, like in every meeting, actually now I'm reflecting and I ask this question. Okay, so we have 30 minutes, for example. What outcome you would like to create, what value you would like to create, what would be one desired thing that you want to get out of this conversation. And then I actually encourage people to speak about that. And then it makes it easier for me to see how my resources or expertise or my thoughts and opinions can actually support another person. And then, yes, it definitely creates the same effect. So it's nice that you put a word on that, actually.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be big things. I mean, it's just sending or like just asking, how was their weekend? If you take the time to check in with your people and ask them how was your weekend, and you take mental notes of what they told you, like this is something that, I mean, when I coach leaders, they make this kind of, they think it needs to be like very formal. I need to talk to my people like on a regular basis, and they make it too formal, too complicated. What I say is, like, when you're waiting for a meeting, let's say you're coming first, and then Alena also, we're here in the meeting waiting for the colleagues. We have a little bit of small talk, but in that small talk, I'm very intentional about, listening in on the things you share. So if you shared that you had a trip with your family, right? You were on a road trip, then I take a mental note of that. And I would use that information to find ways to add value to you. And one way I can add value to is to remember that information, and then ask about, if you're planning for a trip, then once the trip is over, ask about how was your trip, and not do what we usually do when we have conversations with people. Someone say, "Oh, I visited Spain," and then instead of asking, where in Spain, what did you love about that, to have some follow-up questions. We sometimes say, "Oh, I was in Spain too," and they say, "Well, but I visited, Barcelona. Oh, I was in Barcelona too 2 years ago." And all of a sudden, it's like, that's not the conversation, right?
It's about listening. Yeah, it's about listening. And what you're sharing now, it's kind of, there are like these three levels of listening. And actually, it also, like, really great example here, Florin. I think that with listening, it's not about being the first one to talk to and being the first to kind of relate to, oh, yes, this is all about me, but actually being more interested and curious about another person, and build on that. So kind of stepping outside of our own ego, not relating it all to us. And the question that I asked one of my clients that mentioned that was something that changed her, like the way she showed up at work, was, what are you conversing about? And she started paying attention to like these small conversations that she has in the office, and what topics are raised, and what she's sharing about herself, and how she asks questions. And she said that it had a profound effect on increase in her influence in a positive way in the organization. So maybe this is also something that our viewers can ask themselves, like, what are you conversing about when you meet a colleague, or when you just have this corridor conversation? What is that? How does it serve you?
Yeah, and why am I talking right now in this conversation with this person, and why am I not actually using that time to? Most people want to talk about themselves. Like most people, that's what I mean. If you ask them about their hobbies, the things that they're passionate about, you're gonna see that they love about. I mean, if someone asks me about Adam, and if I ask you about your kids, and you're probably gonna talk, for hours, right? So
Which kids?
so what I'm saying is that when people think about adding value, and adding value first, they think that, oh, I need to offer something of value, like maybe a bonus, or I don't have the budget to do that. I need to offer gifts. I don't have the budget to do that. But many times it's just the gift of attention. If you give people that gift, then they will feel like you really care, and they're more likely to use, you're more likely to make use of these principles when you need help from them. But you're very correct in your first observations, because this could be used as a manipulative tool, and that's not what we recommend. And it can also use in a wrong way. And I have a personal example. A few weeks ago, we were on a trip to Spain, and we were staying at a nice hotel, but they had this kind of membership program, and they said if you give up 1 hour of your vacation time and you go through this presentation about our membership program, we're gonna give you 2 gifts. And say, okay, well, okay, our son was sleeping, so why not? Okay, let's go through this presentation. And we went through the presentation, but we didn't feel that the membership was, what something we needed or we wanted, so we didn't buy into the membership, but we didn't give any gift. So, but you say it's a gift. If it's a gift, it's a gift. It's not something that is quid pro quo, right? So you don't give this just if I buy. That's not a gift. So when we talk about here, reciprocity only works if you offer without the expectation to get anything in return. That's when people feel that you really want to offer and really want to give value. So whatever it is that you feel is valuable for your people, if you do it, with no hidden agenda, if you do it with no expectation, that over time will build, reciprocity. We call this like people going around, like leaders going around with change in our pockets. Now we have digital wallets, we don't have change anymore. But imagine having coins in your pocket, and every time you ask your team to do something, you take coins out of your pocket and you kind of pay for that favor. But every time you do something for your team, you put coins in your pocket. So you never want to run out of coins. That's what we need to remind ourselves, right? I always want other people to be in debt to me rather than have debts all over the place because I asked so many people for help and support and I haven't really added value to them first. Does it make sense?
Oh, I like this analogy, and I have a similar project with kids, like with colorful stones that kind of reflecting on who helped you, who did you help today, and these type of things. There's still work in progress, but this is something that I think we can start building from the young age, and I can see now how transferable it is. Thanks to your example, so that was good. And Florin, I wonder here, if we wrap it up with a very specific things, because today we mentioned so many valuable things, and something that stayed with me a lot from your example is about relationship building. But if we just spontaneously try to create that formula of influence, what should be there? What should be the components? So let's try just to build on that spontaneously. Yeah. That was not something we agreed on or discussed prior, but it's just interesting. So building relationship with people, being selfless in this way. I mean, doing something without expecting to get something back. So this is one of the things that can help you elevate the influence. What else do you think should be there?
Yeah, so definitely relationships, but also, at the end of the day, you want to bring results. So if you have really, great time with your people, and we hear so many organizations call themselves we're like a family, but I don't know about your family, but in my family, bad habits are not necessarily addressed because we don't want to hurt the relationship. So if we have a really nice relationship, we are friends, but it's difficult for me as a leader to be able to challenge you when you're not delivering, then that's hurting the results of the team. So at the end of the day, we are, as leaders, we need to provide results. That's why we're a leader. So I would definitely add that your ability to bring results for the team, it will definitely increase your influence. So build relationship with people, but also bring results. And that was probably why I'm mentioning this, is because that was my approach. I was not a very, approachable person. I was more direct in my communication with my engineer, more square in my thinking and my relationships. But what I was able to do, I was able to bring some wins under the belt for the team. And that gave me influence because some people, followed me because what I was able to do for the team. So I would definitely and I think we touched on this a little bit, but if you are more task oriented, more, structured in your approach, you would tend to go with the results building. If you would actually be more relationship oriented, more people oriented, you would go with relationship building. But you would need to have both in order for you to really have build influence with people. So definitely building relationships, Second, bringing results for the organization. That's why you're the leader. And what else would you add?
Oh, there are so many components that I would add here. A lot about trust, and again, how we build trust might also vary depending on, are we more task oriented and people see us that, okay, this person says something and they do it. So doesn't matter if we are not like socially bound or connected, but I see the results and it's totally sufficient for me. So also building trust and understanding how you can develop trust with different people, because it might vary a lot. And I would say the connection, and it's related to the relationship building part, but also when you shared your example, I felt it really strongly that how important it is for you, for example, as a team leader or team manager, you are the connector between another layer like of management and your team. And how you navigate here, because definitely there are power dynamics, even in egalitarian structures. There are relationships there, and when it gets ugly, then it might elevate, and whatever happens, you are the one who kind of can take or make it the best possible outcome, both for your team and for your higher management. So being a connector and seeing yourself as a connector, so you're not playing for or against, but rather you're playing together. So when you see this, like the whole picture, when you have clarity, then you better know what kind of beats you need to navigate. And I think that this is also one of the most important skills actually to develop. And it comes with practice and with intention, or with intentional practice, I would say.
Yeah, I truly agree with you. And it's, you would have to know which tool, if let's say, if we just distill it down to the basics, right? So building relationships, bringing results, and developing people. Like in the building relationship, you have tools like connection, like trust, and you will have to know what tool or what strategy should I use with this person, with this person, and with this person. What you are sharing inside an organization with someone, I might, and this is based on the style and maybe the interests and the expectations of the team that I have to influence. So if I want to influence someone that, let's say, values results, if I go and try to build a relationship with them without being able to bring any results, I might come across as not being, not having influence with them. So it's more or less really understanding the power dynamics in your organization you're part of, and try to kind of map these things out. So if you are a formal leader, let's say you have the title, then you probably, one of your responsibility will be to develop people too. But if you don't have the title, you will have to, just kind of figure out, am I relationship first, or am I better at solving problem? And that would be kind of my go-to way of being the influence. And then if relationship first is kind of my approach, then the tools you just mentioned, trust, connection, are part of the tools that will help you, build that relationship with people, build that connection and build that trust. At the end of the day, people want to follow people that they do know, like, and trust. And how do we build kind of the know, like, and trust? And it's to trust with
I would question the like part.
You would?
Yeah, because I would think, it depends on in which context we talk about it. I would talk about respect, because I see some leaders that they are not necessarily likable in terms of they might take some tough decisions, but they are respected for these decisions because these are fair decisions. Maybe it's a different topic, but I would say, like, generally knowing your values and drivers. And for me, it's a lot about respect, people might not necessarily like me, but they might respect me for the decisions that I take or for how I show up for the team and things like that. So I would just like add a
No,
small bit here.
it's a great perspective, and I don't see them excluding each other. So I might not
Mm,
like a decision you made, but in order for me to follow you on the long run, I need to like you, because if I go to
mm-hmm.
work and I don't feel that I like my colleagues or my boss or my manager, that's not going to be a long position that I'm going to have. It's not going to be a long
Yeah,
term job.
yeah.
So I think the difference is that you need to make the the tough decisions, and probably people like you being able to do that, but might not
Mm,
like the consequence of that, in the short term. I
mm,
remember
mm,
when I mean, this is a different example, but when I was when I was young, I had to kind of be part of the smart street, club with my teenagers, and they were all smoking, so I started smoking as well to be included. And I remember, um, you know, one of my mom's colleagues saw me smoking and then kind of talked to my mom, and I didn't really appreciate at all what she did in that moment, but I realized that she was trying to help me.
mm-hmm.
So in the moment, it was a pain of the decision and the consequence, uh, but she had good intention and she want to help me. So maybe people, um, not like maybe a decision we make, but if we make decisions that turn to be good for the team on the long run, they're
Mm,
probably going to like the way that we took those calls, because the opposite will be that you see the elephant in the room and you do nothing about the elephant in the room,
yeah.
and that's definitely is going to undermine your influence.
Yeah, yeah. This is a good example, and I really appreciate you bringing in examples from your teens years as well. I think it helps um, to bring it as an analogy and also show that how those behaviors are reflected, in different situations, and then how we bring it all to the corporate as well, and what can we do about that? So yeah,
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so to wrap
Um,
it up, I think we because we brought this topic of like, I think Cialdini has also a principle called the principle of liking, and he talks about the idea that we are more inclined to allow people to influence us if we feel that we are alike, if we feel that we have something
mm,
in common. So this shows up in a way that, for example, if you work for Volvo and I work for Volvo, we feel like we have something in common, like we're not strangers. And I'm more likely to, for example, you have to choose between two candidates, and one comes from a different culture, different maybe country background. I know nothing about them, but the other one thing we have in common, that we work for the same organization or the same team, or something like that. I'm more likely to actually go for the candidate if it's a job interview. I'm more likely to go for a candidate that I feel I have something more in common, that we're more alike, because it's a safer bet. Kind of, I know how it was at Volvo, and now that gets me to choose them over the other one. So if we can use, and this was a mistake I made. My mistake was that I would not mention the things we had in common with people. So this is has nothing to do with your position or anything. I was networking, and when I was networking, I thought that these things are not important, and I didn't want people to associate me with Volvo or with any organization. But I realized it was detrimental, because we didn't have anything in common. People didn't feel like we have something that connects us. So to building that connection, Cialdini argues that if we have things in common, we feel like we are more alike than if we don't have things in common, and that gives us more influence with people. So I found that fascinating. There were some mistakes that I made. So um, I thought this might be good for people to also know that.
it's a good example, but it's also like working with cultural intelligence, right? I see lots of familiarity bias, and like often I run this poll, like how do you build your trust with people? and I give different options. Like one option is like we share the same culture and we speak the same language, and then we have something shared as well in terms of the commonalities that we have, and or I trust this person because they do what they say, these type of things. And there is not to say the percentage of the ones who choose we share the same culture or the same like background in a way, about 25% each time. And this is something that might backfire in recruitment, for example, because it's a familiarity bias. So we make decision based on how this person makes us feel because we have a connection, but does it serve well for the role that we are recruiting candidate? So that's why I would say, like, challenge yourself in this way, like, and examine your influence, know your preferences in terms of how you build relationships, how you make decisions, what's your autopilot, and ask people for feedback. I think, Florian, we missed that because this is the most important thing. When we talk about the influence gap, our intention might be good, right? But it can turn into something opposite in the experience of other people. So ask others how they experience you, or ask your team how they experience your leadership style, how they experience you when you are under stress and pressure. This is also very good to know. And then you will get clearly guidance on how to navigate and how to elevate your influence in the desired context, I would say.
I like that you challenge our ideas, and we have a conversation here, because that that's where the best ideas come to the surface. And you're absolutely right with the familiarity bias, but wouldn't we use it in our advantage when we know it exists? So if people have
I
it,
think we do it naturally.
yeah,
We
exactly.
connect with people, we do it naturally. But I think it's a different thing when it comes to like what kind of decisions are we making, and if it involves other people, and what's the purpose of that, of like creating that connection. So I think in with this, we need to put an extra lens and ask ourselves a couple of questions to get clear on that, so that we don't take decisions that satisfy our like internal needs or ourselves, but we take decisions that are actually something that serve well to like the purpose of the whole process.
Yeah, and we should never use this as a manipulative thing, because if you have something in common with someone which is genuine, and you've done something that may connect you, and you have a connection point, mention it. But if there's no connection, don't pretend that you have things in common that you don't have. And when you use it in recruitment, as you say, be aware of it, because this principle of liking could be useful for you when you want to influence someone, but it could be used against you, or you could be suffering from this familiarity bias when you make that shortcut, because it works on you as well. If you feel that the other person has something in common with you, it works for you as well. So I think we are at the top of the time.
Yes.
We've been here for about 50 minutes. So how would we kind of summarize this? If there is one takeaway that people should have, like, what would be one thing you would like them to take away from this discussion?
I would say to examine the gap, because if we are not aware of that, if we don't have clarity on what is missing, then we don't have clear direction. We don't know what to do about it, right? So the actionable step that I would wish our viewers to do is to examine where their intention is misaligned with how people experience them. And the way to do that is just by asking feedback from your colleagues. And my practice shows that people rarely do that on a regular basis, but it's actually something that can help a lot, not only for your own development and growth, but also for building relationships with your peers, with your colleagues, with your stakeholders. So ask for feedback, how they see you, as a leader, how they see you as a team member, and definitely you're going to get some valuable insights. Do you have any recommendation from your side or any action step?
I think that that's very valuable, especially ask that feedback from the people that you feel you might not have a lot of influence with them. You might learn a lot of things. That's most
especially that.
That's most uncomfortable, right? And another layer on top of that is to kind of know yourself. If you're more relationship oriented or task oriented, results oriented, that will give you some hints into how you build trust and influence. And that's probably when you're going to get feedback. If you're too task oriented, the people will tell you, well, I don't really get to know you. I mean, I don't know who Florin is. If you're too relationship oriented, maybe you get some feedback from your people that, you need to step in and bring some results. Hopefully, they will guide you into, what your natural inclination is and what you would need to develop. And if you need any more or less like unbiased, support or thinking partner, both Alena and I, we're available, and we will love to, be a thinking partner for you. So reach out, and we're gonna be more than happy to help.
Definitely, and thank you so much for a valuable conversation, Florin. Pleasure as always.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Alena. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.